If you are an adult, you should definitely start having some estate planning. Just have at least what we call a testamentary trust. You can put favorable terms in your trust that will help your trustee make distributions to your children. Ultimately, that's who you're doing the planning for. Totally selfless. You're not doing it for yourself. It doesn't benefit you because you're going to be passed away. I'm Herman Moncure with Pike, Balin, and Moncure, and this is the Working Class Roundup.
Saddle up. Punch that clock. Let's ride. This is the Working Class Roundup. Spurs truck, boots up, pants rub. Clock in, hold on, don't fold up. We get paid, get drinks, still show up. From the plant yard dust to the highway rust. Raise that cup, let's sound off. This is the Working Class Roundup.
Yeah! Welcome to the Working Class Roundup. I'm your host, Cowboy Jody Collins, and with me, I've got an estate planner extraordinaire. Herman, thank you for joining me, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me, Jody.
Oh, man. Hey, here at the Working Class Roundup, what we do is we feature small and mid-sized businesses in the great state of Texas. We find out what inspires them, what makes them special, what makes them tick. And then on the flip side, we talk about the nightmares and the things that can happen and how insurance can try to protect that. With that, Herman, I got a question for you. I'm sure you've been asked it 100 times. Is what you're doing today what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Partly.
Okay, you gotta let me lay it on me, bro. What is it that inspires you to become an estate planner?
Well, I always had a thought or dreams of kind of being an attorney. Didn't know how that would shake out.
Okay.
In terms of what type of law I wanted to practice. Initially, I wanted to become a lawyer because of a mayor where I'm from. He was a young mayor, and he was also an attorney. So I started looking into that, and I said, well, if he can do it, then I can do it. So that's when I started to really think about becoming an attorney. This was probably back in my early 20s.
Okay, wow. That was the inspiration?
That was my inspiration.
Okay, and then how did it go from the attorney to the estate planning and helping people with leaving a legacy?
Well, when I went back to law school after being in corporate finance for an extended amount of time, initially I wanted to go into municipal finance.
Okay.
And that's where attorneys help municipalities come to market with debt issuances for roads, bridges, stuff like that,
Right.
that municipalities typically bring to their constituents or to their residents. But during that time, I got involved in our estate planning clinic at my law school, and then I just kind of fell in love with it.
You just fell in love with it. That's awesome. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, because I like, again, because of my background in the insurance world, I know how important that planning is. Yeah. And so that's awesome. What makes your practice unique from those in the DFW market area?
I think in the nature, in the grand scheme of thing of estate planning and probate, I think if you have to, especially in the world of probate, people generally are there against their will. It's not because of something where they are looking to go into probate, in which someone has died, right? And there's now they're there to kind of settle the estate. The planning side of that is to help ease the transition, right? You're easing the transition, kind of a protection with insurance, and in which you're easing the transition of assets being distributed from the person who passed away to who they want the assets to go to, whether that's their family, friends, charities, and stuff like that.
Okay, and that makes sense. I like how that's very probate. Can you go a little bit more into that? Because again, not a lot of people, because I get it because I do the insurance thing, but a lot of people don't understand what is probate.
Okay,
what does that mean?
So probate, and I could be playing fast and loose with this, but it's initially a Latin term in terms of meaning to prove. That's essentially where it comes from. Okay, but in terms of the overall process. It's just going to the court. If you have a will document, that will document is going to be submitted to the court to verify that it's in fact the last will and testament of the person who passed away.
Right.
Right, and then the court is then going to look at that will document and make sure that it is in fact that, and then also to verify that the person who's going to administer the assets basically isn't a criminal. Okay.
Okay.
Basically, that they're not.
That's a good thing.
They're not a criminal. That they are of sound mind. That they're not crazy. Right.
Okay.
They're at least 18 years or older, and they're a resident of this state. Or if they're not a resident of this state, that they have someone representing them within the state.
Okay.
Okay. That's if you have a will. If you don't have a will, then the assets. The court is going to make sure that the people who are receiving the assets are the heirs of the person who passed away.
Okay.
And then it goes down the statutory framework in terms of heirship in your respective jurisdiction, how that shakes out.
But I've learned the hard way. I learned the hard way. It's better to have a will to go down that road than not to have a will.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have to do some planning. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that segues perfectly into my next question is when, again, because it's kind of a morbid thing to think about. Like, I'm gonna die but when do you start planning for this stuff?
I would say, depending on it depends on where you are in your station of life. I mean, I would say as early as 18 with power of attorney documents, in which you're going away to young persons going away to school. They have parents who've been being their custodian for them for the past 18 years. So now this young person goes away to college, and now let's just say they have a medical issue. Well, now that they're 18. The parents doesn't have access to that. Yeah. So if that young person wanted their parents to be able to make those decisions or reach out to their medical providers, you need a medical power of attorney to be able to do that. Financially, the financial power of attorney document, same thing. If the person is incapacitated, can't make decisions at that time, you need a financial power of attorney to do so. I think everyone should have at least those two documents. Irrespective of the assets that you start accumulating, because at any given point in time, you can be traveling down the street or get into an accident, have a closed head injury. When I was in undergrad, I worked full time for a brain rehabilitation closed head injury place, and the wildest accidents happened in which someone had a closed head injury, they're incapacitated to a certain level. So I think those two documents are paramount. You should have them just in terms of
from the get-go.
From the get-go.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then so then the will and the all the life insurance and stuff like that, all that, when would that come in?
When you start accumulating assets.
Okay.
Typically, when you've accumulated assets and you care about where the assets go, then you should start doing some planning. If you are an adult and you are married, or I won't say you're not married, but again, if you have children, you should definitely start having do some estate planning, have at least what we call a testamentary trust established again in your will document that transfers the assets that you have to your children. Because ultimately, if you don't have that type of planning in place, then any assets that you have, your children may receive them, and if they are under 18. They're going to be placed in a trust that the court is going to set up.
Right.
And that is typically is not in favor of the. You could put favorable terms in your trust that will help your trustee take care of or make distributions to your children that helps with them taking making payments for school. Just day-to-day life, right?
Right.
As opposed to sometimes these what we call management trusts, they don't have that much leeway. So it's better to do that type of planning on the front end.
Yeah, and I could see, Herman, that this is super important, especially today, because I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of the kids today, like my boys, they didn't get their license. Like I was chomping at the bit to get my license when I turned 16, right?
I'm hearing that.
Yeah, they don't do that at 21. It's like, go get your dang, and they're still living at home, and they're commingling on the insurance even. Yeah. They're being forced off their parents' policies at 26, and then so the problem with that is that they're not established. They're not set up the right way. Yeah. Do you happen to know what the percentage of people that don't have a will out there or that don't have
I don't, to be honest, but I will say that I did read an article maybe a couple months back that spoke about the number of hours that it takes to administer an estate,
Okay.
essentially, right? With no planning, right? With no planning involved, they estimated it took about 800 to 900 hours.
Wow. Oh, man.
Right. So I don't know the numbers, and I'm pretty sure it's high because unfortunately people look at planning for transferring of assets when you die is a very morose thing to do.
Sure.
Right. And the thought of passing away typically is in the back of our minds. We don't think about I could pass away tomorrow.
Yeah.
Life is not promised, right?
Nope.
Life is not promised. It's
Not
a
at all.
gift. You should appreciate every day. But so I don't know the exact percentage for terms of persons without a will document or some sort of estate planning, but I will say that the percentage, well, the number of hours to cut back on that, to help the people who come after you sort through your crap, so to speak, right?
Right.
Because ultimately, that's who you're doing the planning for. You're not doing it. This is something that's totally selfless. You're not doing it for yourself. It doesn't benefit you because you're going to be passed away, right?
Right.
It's
Can't take it with you.
Right. It's for the people who come after you, who are going to receive these assets and who have to kind of sort through the muck.
Yeah. And it's one of those things because I've seen, like personal example, my parents passed, but my brothers and I, it's like we saw something, they're like, hey, do you want that? Yeah, go for it. You can have it. We were not, but I'm not seeing that with all families. Sometimes it's brutal.
Oh, it's brutal.
Right.
Absolutely.
And again, no amount of family counseling was going to solve that. So you need the law to come in and say, this goes here, and that's the end. Right?
Absolutely. But I will say that I think transparency is key.
Okay.
Right. A lot of times what happens is that the planning mother or dad do this planning, right? And they do it in a vacuum. They don't communicate it to the other siblings, and one sibling knows one thing, the other sibling don't. So then when mom or dad passes away and now everything has to be probated, because the sibling that was out of the loop feels slighted in such a way, now I'm going to cause a fuss. And
Yeah.
that's conflict. So the transparency helped to lube that transition in terms
Sure.
of getting the assets to your children or who they're supposed to go to without the conflict.
Right. No, and that makes total sense because again, most parents want their kids to get along, right?
Yeah.
When they're gone, that's what they're going to have for each other as support, as family.
And I will say that's a fallacy.
Ed.
Because some siblings, I have a couple, and but I get so all siblings don't have I guess a great relationship. Sibling dynamics start to take place, in which then the linchpin, the link is the parent.
Sure.
And when that
They were the
parent
glue that kind of bonded everybody together.
and
Yeah.
when the parent is not there anymore,
Yeah.
all holds barred, no holds barred. The gloves are off, and the fact that mom always took care of you when we were kids, and you through your adulthood, and never did anything for me, those issues start to come up.
Yeah.
And that's where we
I can see
see the
that.
conflicts.
I can see that. Well, I'm being flagged. We got to take a commercial break, Herman, so give me a second. Wait, Working Class, we'll be right back after some words and wise words and from our sponsors and partners in crime. We'll be back to the Working Class Roundup.
Most businesses waste money boosting weak content. We focused on strong content first. A lot of people, they post content everywhere expecting results. But what they fail to do is do the strategy side of things. Like, yes, the algorithm loves that you post content every single day. But the thing is AI can do that. So what makes your brand different is being more consistent, yes, but also being more impactful with your clients and with your content. If you're interested in learning more, please book a strategy call today and I'll see you there.
Hey, Working Class Nation, Cowboy Jody Collins here with Amex Commercial. If you own your business, if you have a business you work for and you need to protect it, we want to be that company to protect you. We want to offer you those solutions that fit your budget. We can offer general liability, workers' comp, commercial auto, or any of the other commercial lines of business available to protect your assets. Give us a call today at the link below. We'd love to help you out. See you on the flip side. Enjoy the rest of the show. Hey, welcome back to the Working Class Roundup. We're talking to Herman, an estate planner extraordinaire, guru, and a partner, right?
Yes.
You recently made a partner. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So one of the scenarios that I was thinking about in my mind, because I always like to try to associate insurance into what you do, right?
Okay.
And life insurance or key life insurance is so important for a business, right? Because the key life is basically if something bad happens to the owner of business, it pays out. So, if he passes, there's money, right? And there's enough money for the surviving spouse to hire somebody to run the business. But more importantly, it buys them time.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning how much time it takes to. So if your spouse who owned the business, had a lot of assets, passes, that life insurance can get you a lot of time to settle the courts. What happens if they don't do that? What's a story that that somebody didn't take the time or didn't have that in and how it turned bad for them?
Well, in terms of that, let's just say in terms of with businesses, right? Someone passed away. That person who was running the business typically has a business account, right?
Right.
May have employees, right? In which they make payroll from the business account. Well, if that spouse isn't on the account when the owner of the business passes
Right.
away, then that account gets frozen.
Wow.
So how do you make payroll?
Yeah.
How do you, do those things to keep the business at least going until you can, adequately wind those things up? And I think, and then two, again, maybe some of the income from that business is going towards paying for the spouse. Maybe she didn't work,
Right.
and maybe maybe there were sometimes business owners mean well, but they use the business account for everything, right? And don't necessarily take the steps to transfer any income from the business to their personal account. They
Right.
just they
Yeah.
play
They
fast and loose
commingle.
with it,
Yeah.
right? So that spouse then doesn't have any income, right, from the business, because if that person was the sole, I won't say sole breadwinner, but the sole person who was bringing in the business and then converting the business into income or to revenue, right? So
Right.
then ultimately, when that person passed away, there's no more revenue. So.
Yeah. That would be bad. That would be really bad. I'm seeing, and again, the reason I mention that is that there's certain stopgaps, right? So if you got a business and they have a workers' comp policy and they're on the job and the death happens, workers' comp's going to take care of them until their retirement age. There's a rider you can put on there for that will do that for you. But if they're just driving to the store and something bad happens, that's a totally different scenario. Now it's workers' comp doesn't have anything to do with it. Now it's estate planning, it's life insurance, it's all those things that you built for your other. And then the other thing that's really scary, and this is a true story, a lot of people commingle their business, right? They didn't set their business up. It was just a side hustle. And they decided, okay, I'm going to do this full time now. But they didn't incorporate, they didn't LLC it. So they basically, asset wise, it's all mixed together. And if something were to happen to them, all the assets get frozen, right? And yeah, it's not a pretty picture.
Well, it's just depending on how you're. So, again, I'm not that type of attorney, but and estate planning is kind of unique in it's probate because we're dealing with multiple things, right?
Right.
In terms of we're dealing with real estate, we deal with business laws too, like in terms of how things are set up.
When they're commingling and they've got everything, all their assets, and what's the challenges that they might have if they don't have a will or they don't have a plan?
Right. So it just depends on how they're organized. If you're a self-employed taxpayer, and you haven't organized formally into a LLC or corporation, S corp or something like that, then it's still considered part of their estate.
Okay.
So then you can actively probate and still that account is still, it's not considered a quote unquote technically a business account. It's still considered an account, and if that person's name is on the account, they can still have access to it. But it starts to get murky and starts to get, with having a lot of issues when a person is not on the account and you're organized as an LLC or you're organized as an S corp. What happens with that person in terms of, do you have additional managers? Do you have, what's the membership structure? What's the
Right.
ownership structure in terms of shareholders? So it can get murky.
Yeah,
so-
I bet it could be. And so estate plan really is kind of just a roadmap of how to process things, right? How
Absolutely.
to take care of things. So I got my loaded shotgun question for you, because this one's so husband and wife,
Okay.
right? They received notice that that grandpa on the dad's side passes away,
Okay.
and they're going through estate, right? He has a will and everything, and so they're going through that. But before anything gets settled, husband passes away.
Okay.
Now there's 3 children also in this household. But now when the lawyers call, they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss. Your husband's no longer there." But the settlement now has to go to the children.
Okay.
Talk about that. How come the wife got bypassed in that scenario?
Typically, it's probably because the assets passed to the husband via the will document from grandpa, right?
Yeah.
And because of Texas being what we call a community property state, so community property is a designation for assets when you're married, right? And when you're married, assets that are of the marriage are typically community property, meaning that each spouse has a 1/2 interest in that property.
Okay.
With exceptions, and the exception is inherited property. If if assets are inherited from a person's family or whoever, that's typically looked at as separate property.
Okay.
So the fact that mom and dad was married and dad inherited this property is considered his separate property. Now, when you pass away and mom and dad doesn't have and dad doesn't have a will, now this separate property, because dad didn't have a will, these assets then are distributed to his children, because they're children, although they're children of the marriage, these assets then go to the children and not to mom.
Right.
Okay, because it just follows the inheritance.
Gotcha. It falls down the line,
Fine,
right? Okay. And if they would have had a
So mom would get a 1/3 interest in the property,
Okay.
right? But she doesn't get the full, right? She doesn't get the full.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Awesome. Herman, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, or if they had questions, because again, this is something it's very complex, and we're not going to answer it in a quick 20-minute segment. But if they wanted to get a hold, how would they get a hold of you?
Reach out to us at DallasProbateLaw.com,
Okay.
or you can give us a call at 214-866-0133. We have people who answer the phones, and our intake coordinator will take your information and process you in terms of who we have 6 attorneys in the office.
Okay.
So and you will be paired with someone to help you depending on what your situation is, and we will take care of that for you.
Awesome. We'll definitely put your information down in the link below. That way, if anybody wants to reach out to you, would you mind if we had some really good questions? You coming back?
Oh, no,
to
I
talk
do
to
not
us?
mind. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for
And
having me again.
And if you need help with your business insurance or your commercial insurance, you can reach out to me and my team at Amax Commercial. We'll wrestle up some insurance solutions for you. Harmon, thank you for joining me today.
thank you.
Appreciate it. And to the Working Class Nation, happy sales, happy trails. We'll see you on the flip.
This